lecture on Classics Day honors Aloysius B. McCabe, who graduated from GFS in 1945, the year that World War II ended. His children established this lecture in his memory because he had such a love for GFS and for the classics. And so this year, I'm so pleased to introduce Brian Rose, who's going to speak with us about recent excavations at Troy and answer some questions that I think you've been wondering about and that we've talked about a bit in class. He graduated from Haverford with a degree in archaeology, and then he went on to Columbia for his MA and PhD in art history and archaeology. And he has, since 1988, been the head of post-Bronze Age excavation at Troy. So he has had a long history there, and he has much to tell us. So let us give a warm welcome to Brian Rose.
Okay, thank you. What I'm going to do today is try to give you, I guess, the greatest hits of my last 25 years of excavations at Troy. And as one excavates at Troy, there's one thing in the forefront of one's mind virtually every day and every season, which is whether or not what we're excavating has anything to do, either pro or con, against the theories of the Trojan War. And you're seeing an aerial view of the Mound of Troy here, which is going to be the focus of what I say today. Everyone who thinks about Troy puts it usually in the wrong geographical location. In my experience, no one really knows where Troy is located. So I always start off with a slide of a map. Troy is here at the mouth of a body of water called the Dardanelles, or the Hellespont, that connects the Aegean Sea with the Sea of Marmara, and then ultimately with the Black Sea. So if you were trading in antiquity between the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea, you would have to go past Troy. And whoever controlled Troy, the citadel of Troy, would control that maritime corridor that linked the Aegean Sea and the Black Sea. So I don't know if any of you have actually sailed through this area. Someday you will. But one sails past Troy here and then through the Bosphorus, past Istanbul or Constantinople before accessing the Black Sea or the region around it. And this was one of the great grain suppliers in antiquity. So there were a lot of wars that occurred at Troy, not just one. We speak of one Trojan War, but in fact we should speak of many. Not because a woman was seized in Greece and taken across the Aegean, although I can't say that didn't happen, but more because of the strategic geographical location of Troy. Its location at the entrance to the Dardanelles or the Hellespont. And you're seeing a fairly recent aerial view of the Mound of Troy here, which is where we've done most of our excavations. I'll show you a lot of aerial views because Troy is a very complex site, and it's more easily understood from the air rather than from the ground. Every archaeologist who has come to excavate at Troy, and Troy has been under excavation off and on since 1870, since the second half of the 19th century, has come here with the intent of assessing the historicity of the Homeric tradition. So trying to prove whether or not the war about which Homer wrote in the Iliad and the Odyssey actually happened. And if it did it happen here? And you see these references to the Homeric heritage of the region, and we call this region the Troad, virtually everywhere you look. So if you come to the entrance of Troy now, you will be greeted by a colossal wooden horse, one of two wooden horses that are located in this area. And as you see, it has a hollow stomach. One can go up into the horse and look out the sides, just as you will have read about in the Odyssey or in the Aeneid. Anyone who goes to Mount Ida, which is the site down the road from Troy where Zeus allegedly watched the Trojan War occur, will be able to see a reenactment of the Judgment of Paris beauty contest, which you all know about, the world's first beauty contest, where three goddesses, Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera, claimed title to a golden apple, marched to the fairest. And Aphrodite bribed the judge of that contest, a man named Paris, son of the king of Troy, in order to win the golden apple, and in return he got Helen of Sparta, soon to be Helen of Troy. And that beauty contest is still reenacted, not with goddesses, but with women from the Ida Mountains, every first weekend in August. And the story of the Trojan War is told in Turkish, which of course is the area in which we're situated. And then one of these women will get the golden apple, which is, of course, paper mache now, not golden, as well as a college scholarship. But it highlights the importance of the Homeric heritage in this area. Anyone who comes here literally sees it everywhere one looks. When excavations here started in 1870, extensive excavations that is, they were overseen by a German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann, who dug here off and on between 1870 and 1890. Schliemann had no training in archaeology when he started digging here, and that was true for most people in the second half of the 19th century. We think of archaeology as a very old discipline, but in fact it's a very new one. And in 1870 it wasn't at all uncommon for someone with a lot of money to come to a site like this and to start digging. Schliemann had no idea how complex a site this was on the first day of excavation, or even after the first year of excavation. Here again is the Mound of Troy, and if I were to separate the Mound of Troy into all the settlements that are part of that mound, it would look like this. We did this illustration as a sort of X-ray of the Mound of Troy in the early 90s, where we wanted to show what each of the settlements of Troy would look like at its period of greatest prosperity. As you know, the Mound of Troy is not just one settlement, it's 9 or 10 settlements, one built on top of the other, over the course of about 4,500 years. So Troy I, the first settlement of Troy, is established about 3000 BC, at the beginning of the Bronze Age. When I refer to the Bronze Age, I basically mean the period between 3000 and 1000 BC, after which we get into the Greek, Roman, and Byzantine periods. And so 3000, the site is established, and that first level is built and destroyed, and then a new settlement is established on top of the ruins, the foundations of the old city. That city is destroyed, and gradually this happens 9 or 10 times, until you end up with a mound that rises 20 to 30 meters above the surrounding plain. So as you dig down through here, you're digging down through 4,500 years of nearly continuous occupation, from 3000 BC until about 1400 AD, the end of the Byzantine Empire. You notice that one of these cities, one of the 9 cities that we've indicated for you here, has been singled out for special attention and enlarged on the right side of the slide. This is the 6th settlement of Troy, the late Bronze Age, or 2nd millennium BC settlement of Troy, which is the one that's been most frequently associated with armed conflict between Greeks and Trojans. And I'll say more about that as we go along. When Troy was first established, the geographical surroundings were very different from what you see now. If I fly you again over the Mound of Troy, and you see here in the distance the Dardanelles or the Hellespont, with the Gallipoli Peninsula directly opposite it. This is where the Battle of Gallipoli in 1915 in World War I occurred, and I'll say more about that later too. But you notice how flat the area is to the north of the mound and to the west of the mound. And that's because originally all of this was water. We've done a series of drills, drilling in the plain every 10 meters from the northern edge of the mound all the way to the Dardanelles, and we've been able to show that when the site of Troy was first established, 5,000 years ago, it was right on the water. So in other words, there was a lagoon that came in from the Dardanelles. So here's the Dardanelles or the Hellespont up here. This is now all land, but if I take you back 5,000 years, this was all water. So Troy occupied a very sheltered position. One could sail into a kind of harbor and dock just to the west of the mound. And then over the course of the last 5,000 years, the coastline is silted up about 8 kilometers, which is why it looks the way it does today. I want to focus on 2 settlements in particular of Bronze Age date. One from the early Bronze Age, that's to say the 3rd millennium BC, and 2 from the late Bronze Age, the 6th and 7th settlements. And both of those will say something about warfare, or at least how the residents of the site prepared themselves for armed conflict. What you're seeing here is a color phase plan that we did of Troy a few years ago. I wanted to do a single plan that showed all the walls, buildings, and streets that all of us had found at Troy over the years, over the last 140 years. And so what I did was to superimpose everything we had found and our predecessors had found on a single plan